Hello there, good evening ladies and gentlemen, this is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. A phone call between US President Joe Biden and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin has failed to ease tension over Ukraine. Meanwhile, Germany has joined other countries in telling its nationals to leave Ukraine. The top diplomats of Japan, South Korea and United States declared their unity against North Korea Saturday after a series of ballistic missile launches by Pyongyang. Tunisia's president signed a decree to establish a provisional Supreme Judiciary Council to replace the current body. The Supreme Judicial Council was dissolved to end impunity and interim council was brought in place. Protests grow across Canada as police struggle to reopen Key Bridge. Police had already success in clearing Ambassador Bridge, but demonstrators still choke vital trade route. In sport, this year's edition of the Super Bowl will be 56 in the event's history as the American football fans across the world tune and for the sport's biggest game between Rams and Bengals. Hello again and welcome to Al24 World Latest. Despite the long-lasting phone call between Russian Vladimir Putin and his American counterpart, the two presidents agreed to continue contacts at all levels, and the Russian side carefully analyzed Biden's concerns. The Biden administration continues to complain about Russia's invasion of Ukraine at any time, warning that Russian forces could take Kiev within 3 hours. In the same line of thought, the U.S. Department of Defense presented its version in connection with the incident with the U.S. nuclear-powered submarine near the Coral Chain, according to which submarine was moving in international waters. The U.S. Navy denied operating in Russian territorial waters on Saturday after Russia's military claimed it chased away a Virginia-class submarine in Kurilla Island after the American vessel refused an order to surface. Australia is evacuating its embassy in Kiev as a global concern months around the security situation on the border of Ukraine with the buildup of Russian troops. Prime Minister Scott Morrison warns that the situation in Ukraine has reached a dangerous stage as he temporarily suspended the operations of the Australian embassy in Kiev.
In Kiev, they have already departed some time ago, and we have 3 remaining staff, and they have been instructed now to move as other Five Eye countries are to Lviv, and you would have seen the announcement from the United States as well and Canada, and that is the next stage in Australians being moved to safety. I want to thank particularly those 3 Australian-based staff who have been there supporting in a consular way the many Australians, many of whom are joint citizens, dual citizens, who are in Ukraine. But the situation, as you are all hearing as well, is deteriorating and is reaching a very dangerous stage.
In the same line of thought, Ukrainian residents marched through the streets of Kiev in a show of unity as tensions continue to mount with Russia, with several NATO countries ordering residents to leave the country immediately.
Waving flags and singing the national anthem, thousands of Ukrainians braved the winter cold to march across the capital Kiev to show unity in the face of a feared Russian invasion.
If it happens, we don't want to, but it will happen. We are here to stay. This kind of meeting is about Ukrainian people to gather all around together to show that we are not separated, we love our country, and we also can protect it if it needed in any time. So that's why we are here.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who attended police trains in the southern Kherson region, said the Russian attack could happen at any time. He told people not to panic and pushed back against what he said was a surplus of bleak war predictions being reported in the media.
truth that we have different information, and now the best friend for enemies, that is panic in our country, and all this information that helps only for panic doesn't help us.
Ukrainians filed through the center of Kiev in a column, chanting glory to Ukraine and carrying Ukrainian flag and banners that said Ukrainians will resist and invaders must die. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, meanwhile, in an address asked people not to panic, stressing they must not play into the enemy's hands. He also said their army was ready and strong.
Such a unity in a world's prominent democratic countries has not been observed. For dozens of years, our enemy can see that and is trying to shake the ship from inside to intimidate us, to divide us. We're getting stronger every day in terms of defense, politics, and economy.
The United States and numerous Western governments have urged their citizens to leave Ukraine, and Washington said it was ordering most of its Kiev embassy staff to leave.
The U.S. Secretary Antony Blinken has met his Japanese and South Korean counterpart. These three ministers held a news conference to talk more about regional issues, mainly the South Korean missile tests, which worry its neighbors, including North Korea and Japan. Islam Seed on Watch Follow.
The recent missile tests have rattled Pyongyang's neighbors in South Korea and Japan. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a meeting with his South Korean Japanese counterpart in the American state of Hawaii to discuss the threat posed by nuclear armed of North Korea. During the news conference, the three countries has agreed on the same approach, which condemns the recent missile launches, calling for the North Korean leader to be open to dialogue and cease its illegal activities.
I think it is clear to all of us that the DPRK is in a phase of provocation. We condemn the recent missile launches, violations of UN Security Council resolutions. We will continue to hold the DPRK accountable, even as we seek to engage in diplomacy. We are absolutely united in our approach, in our determination, and that unity of purpose is, I think, vitally important for dealing with the challenge.
Japan's foreign ministry has held a collaboration with the United States as a response to North Korea and to achieve regional stability. According to some expertise, North Korea's missile test aims at putting pressure on Biden's administration to carry on long-stalled nuclear negotiations coinciding the economic strains due to the COVID-19 outbreak, which has been struggled by mismanagement and sanctions led by the U.S. North Korea has posed its test during China's Winter Olympics, its main ally and economic lifeline, with a possibility to increase the drills right after the Olympics.
Thousands of citizens across Europe protested against the rising cost of living. This event, co-organized by People's Assembly and trade unions, are held in at least 25 towns and cities. More in this report to be clarified.
Official venture out of shielding.
Thousands across the United Kingdom took the streets calling on the government to intervene in the cost of living crisis as they highlighted the impact of soaring bills and taxes on struggling families. The protests come as UK inflation jumped to the highest rate in 30 years, up to 5.4% in December. The Bank of England has warned that consumer price index would exceed 6% by April.
And we're out because, the hikes in national insurance, the hikes in the upcoming energy bills, it's really going to affect us. 7 out of 10 carers don't even get £10 an hour at the moment.
The issue that's coming down the road of the squeeze on cost of living is going to be massive, and we're extremely worried about it, and we want to let people know how angry we are.
The large crowds gathered in Parliament Square in London to protest against the UK's cost of living crisis. The event was attended by former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.
Arguing with people about the need for increasing tax at the top end, a wealth tax, a windfall tax, all of those things that are so important.
Sharon Graham, General Secretary of Unite, explained the reason behind these protests.
People are fed up of rich men telling them that they have to pay for boardroom greed and colossal market failure.
The People's Assembly coordinated the demonstration, supported by trade unions, in towns and cities around the UK on Saturday. Placards were held up in Parliament Square reading "Tax the Rich" and taking aim at skyrocketing energy costs.
In Africa, Tunisian President Kais Saied replaced the Superior Council of Judiciary that he dissolved a week ago with another temporary body and prohibited judges to demonstrate, resulting in protesters to take the streets on the capital Tunis as part of a march organized by the country's biggest political party, Ennahda. Miriam Zian on Watch Follow.
Tunisia's president has signed a decree creating a new interim Supreme Judiciary Council to replace the one he abolished and give himself more influence over the country's top judicial body. According to the decree, the president has control over the selection, appointment, promotion and transfer of judges and can act as a disciplinary body in charge of removals in certain circumstances. However, none of the judges appointed to the new council will be elected, which is contrary to international law. A few hours after the publication of this decision, more than 2,000 demonstrators gathered in the center of Tunis to protest against the new measure of the Tunisian president and to express their fears about the independence of the judicial system. Holding Tunisian flags, some chanted "Freedom, freedom, the police state is over."
We were 6 people on July 25th. Now we are thousands. On July 25th, he had a lot of people behind him. Now he's alone, and even with himself. I think he's not even with himself. So we're proud of these people, of these activists.
The International Court of Justice said on Twitter that the decree consolidates the power in the hands of the President of the Republic, effectively ending any aspect of judicial independence in the country. The removal of the Judicial Council, according to Saied, was a must because Tunisians wanted the nation cleansed. After his antagonistic decision to abolish the Supreme Court Council, perceived as a democratic defeat in the cradle of the Arab Spring, the country's leader has faced domestic and international criticism.
United Nations officials confirmed that 5 UN staff members were kidnapped in Yemen's turbulent southern province of Abyan. Russell Jeek, the senior communications advisor to resident and humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, said that the UN staff members were on the way back to Aden after having completed a failed mission. A police barrier of the key crossing between Canada and the United States has begun to be lifted. Officers advised to obey an injunction against the demonstration after days of demonstrations by trackers against COVID-19 rules by the Ambassador Bridge in Ontario. Sofiane Kanturi on Watch Follow.
Windsor, Ontario, Detroit and Michigan are connected by this crucial commercial route. Truckers are protesting COVID vaccination mandates at all the border crossing as well as in Ottawa. Canadian truckers who were opposed to a vaccinate or quarantine edict for drivers crossing the border, creating the self-styled Freedom Convoy movement.
All of the mandates, the masks, the vaccines, the social distancing. We're humans. We need that, our social contact. We need to hug each other. They're making people so afraid of each other, you know, and the way the kids are growing up, it's disgusting.
The City of Windsor and the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association sought a court injunction against the roadblock on Friday, claiming that the convoy was costing them up to $15 million per day. Following the injunction, Windsor police issued a statement to make demonstrators completely aware that blocking the border crossing is a criminal offense.
No, it's my 3rd time back up here. So I've been here on the first weekend. Last week we came up and we're back again. We'll keep coming back as often as we can.
This kind of American right-wing populism, extremism, it's not welcome here. All they hear from themselves is they just hype themselves up. They give themselves positive feedback.
A criminal conviction might result in seizures of vehicles and the inability to enter the United States. Nonetheless, crowds of protesters flying Canada flags defied the ban and proceeded to occupy the bridge several hours later. While policemen initially succeeded in clearing the road on Saturday, additional supporters arrived throughout the day, eventually outnumbering the officers attempting to drive the masses away.
German President Frank Waltz, or as it is said in German, Frank Falls, Steinman was re-elected for a second term of 5 years by a special parliamentary assembly on Sunday and vowed to heal the wounds left by the coronavirus and fight enemies of democracy. The president was elected with a big majority by a special assembly made up of members of parliament's lower house and representatives of Germany's 16 states. In France, a convoy protesting COVID-19 restrictions broke police defense and drove into central Paris on Saturday, stalling traffic around l'Arc de Triomphe en Champs-Élysées as police fired tear gas on demonstrators. Zara Frajani.
French police fired tear gas at demonstrators on the Champs-Élysées Avenue and other places in Paris after a freedom convoy protesting against COVID-19 mandates made their way into the capital to copy Canada's freedom convoy protest against COVID-19 restrictions.
COVID and the story of the past is the anti-freedom of our country. You realize that in Europe we have created freedom of movement and we are being checked by the CRS.
Riot police threw tear gas grenades to keep order at the street protest where demonstrators railed against Macron's coronavirus vaccine pass rules and the cost of living.
These people who are afraid. It is their fear that is so great that suddenly we must not move, we must be at home, we must be locked up.
President Emmanuel Macron said in an interview on Friday with West France that the country is tired of what it's been going through for 2 years.
We see a very strong mental suffering in our young and old. Sometimes this fatigue also results in anger. I hear it and respect it, but I call for the utmost calm.
France requires people to show proof of vaccination to enter public places such as cafes, restaurants and museums, with a negative test no longer being sufficient for unvaccinated people.
It's very simple. On February 15th, the vaccine pass will drop for those who will not have their third dose, and in 6 weeks, the vaccine pass drops itself.
2 months before the presidential election, the government says it plans to lift the vaccination pass by the end of March or the beginning of April, and intends to abolish the obligation to wear a mask as of February 28th in places where the pass is required.
French forces have killed dozens of fighters in Burkina Faso linked to a deadly attack this week in neighboring Benin, whose victims include Frenchmen. The French-led Burkina force in the Sahel region engaged in its intelligence capacities to locate the armed groups responsible for the attacks before carrying out an attack that killed 40 fighters, the Army's General Command said on Saturday. EU Economic Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni has said that the time for discussing vaccine mandates has passed. He said he saw no reason for governments to introduce a general coronavirus vaccine mandate anymore, given the declined severity of pandemic. Meanwhile, a key German lawmaker said such a move would not find majority support Parliament. More international news in this roundup by Hussein Burkan.
The Swiss were voting Sunday on whether to prohibit all tobacco product advertising and separately whether to prohibit all animal testing. In-person voting began at 10 a.m. as part of Switzerland's direct democracy system, with polls closing barely 2 hours later because the majority of individuals voted in advance by email. A journalist was killed in Mexico, the 5th journalist to be killed in the country since the beginning of the year. The Public Prosecution Office of the state of Oaxaca announced Thursday confirming the arrest of 2 suspects. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Sudan's military chief, has downplayed Western threats of sanction linked to the country's demonstrations and highlighted talks between Sudanese and Zionist officials, which he claimed were for security cooperation rather than politics. Hugo Torres, the former hero of Sandinista Front and an opponent of Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, died Saturday in his detention at the age of 73, 8 months after his arrest in June 2021. In December, Torres was transferred from El Chapito prison to the hospital, according to his relatives. The U.S. paused avocado shipments from one of Mexico's major producing regions on security worries in an announcement just a day before the Super Bowl, when guacamole consumption typically soars.
In Europe, Portugal and Spain are experiencing some of the worst drought in the last 20 years. According to a climate scientist, water reservoirs are drying out in plain sight, worrying local farmers and residents. Islam Seed has more to clarify this situation.
With almost no rain for 2 months and not much expected at any time soon, Portugal and Spain are experiencing severe, if not an extreme period of drought, which can heavily affect crops and water sources.
As water supplies have declined by 20% over the last 20 years, each time we have a drought, depending on its intensity and duration, the situation only gets worse.
Experts say that climate change has made the problem worse. The drying zones of the Iberian Peninsula have seen an increase of frequency of drought over the past 20 years.
It's simple. There is no water, so the grass doesn't grow. I only water a very small parcel there, but only once a week, because the water sources have very little flow, very low. Here in all this area, that's not watered, nothing grows. Nothing grows and therefore animals eat little.
Farmers in Portugal and Spain who cultivate vegetables for the entire European market are concerned that their harvest will be wrecked this season due to the low record and no rainfall.
The last time we came here, we came by boat. We brought a canoe. There were 3 of us. We parked the boat under the church and we climbed to the top of San Salvador.
Other areas in central and northeast Spain are also under the heat.
It only rained about 2/3 of what it should have rained. The first 4 months of the hydrological year, October, November, December, and January, were drier than usual, and January was particularly dry. It only rained a quarter of what should have rained, so really dry.
Scientists estimate that Portugal will see a drop in average annual rainfall of 20 to 40% by the end of the century.
Another international news break, but this time within the economic sector, precisely with Usama Ayadi.
U.S. consumer price inflation rose 0.6% in January and propelled annual inflation up to 7.5%, its highest rate since 1982. The rise in nearly every spending category was driven by increases in food and energy costs, as well as growing costs of cars and rents. The Office for National Statistics reported that the British economy grew by 7.5% in 2021, following a slam of nearly 10% the year before, when COVID-19 lockdowns and interim restrictions disrupted economic activity. The record growth came in spite of a 0.2 contraction in December, as the economic variant of COVID-19 triggered tougher restrictions and kept consumers at home in the run-up to Christmas. Soaring diesel prices are straining governments as they seek to stave off inflation from rising energy costs and quell discontent from aggrieved truck operators that are seeking profit shrink. The diesel market in Asia has tightened significantly as reduced supplies from China coincided with production disruptions and surging demands in economies rebounding from the pandemic. According to data published by the country's central bank, Russia's gold and foreign currency holdings have reached $634.9 billion. Reserves have surged $800 million from the previous week, noting that the 0.1 rise was due to a positive market revaluation. The historical maximum of $639.6 billion was recorded last month.
In America today, in hours from now, Super Bowl 56 edition will kick off afternoon in LA, Los Angeles, between the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals, a game that all Americans are waiting for. So, who's going to make it to the Golden Rings? Rimzian.
The NFC champions, the LA Rams, and the AFC champions, the Cincinnati Bengals, will face off in the big game today, Sunday. Super Bowl 56 will be held inside California's SoFi Stadium, which opened in September of 2020, which is located in Inglewood, about 20 minutes from Los Angeles. SoFi Stadium's normal seating capacity is 70,000, although that number can expand to 100,000 with 3.1 million square feet, and its campus is 3.5 times bigger than Disneyland's. As a COVID-19 precautionary measure, the spectators are required to present a negative test before entering. This year will mark the 30th Super Bowl played in California, and the 2022 Super Bowl show will be an entertaining one for Americans, with a night show hosted by celebrities, singers, ads and sitcoms amid COVID-19 pandemic, inflation, and Russia-Ukraine tensions. Los Angeles Rams head coach Sean McVay said his team was ready to go following the club's final on-field preparations before they take on the Cincinnati Bengals.
In a lot of instances, it's trusting your process, trusting the preparation, and just being able to just stay nice and still. There's a long, guys are excited, and we want that. But we want to make sure that we expend our energy the right way, use every minute that we have to allow ourselves to play with that quieted mind, and that's what these guys have done. And there's tremendous confidence because the way that our leaders and our players have really attacked the last couple weeks, and I'm excited to watch them go compete on Sunday.
The Rams have never won a Super Bowl while representing Los Angeles. Their unique championship came in 2000 when they were based in St. Louis. And the Bengals are looking to win their first title since being founded in 1967. The game is expected to be the most watched one ever, with all 70,000 seats to be filled.
New Brentford signing Christian Eriksen has finally come back, and he was well received by the Brentford fans following his cardiac arrest at Euro 2020. So, as a football fan, as a human being before all, we are all glad to see him back on his feet.
No, first of all, very nice. I mean, it's something that I've spent a lot of time working towards and doing a lot of testing to be able to be where I am today. So no, I'm really looking forward to it. Of course, it's getting closer and closer by, so I do feel on my head and on my body that the excitement and adrenaline is coming more and more towards game time.
Well deserved and well returned. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. See you tomorrow and have a blessed evening.